What's up everybody? Today's video is going to be a video on how to make a stationary tool stand, an extremely solid workbench, or even just a small side table. So they all have the same skeleton, so I'll show you how to make the skeleton. And at the end of the video, I'll show you how I took the skeleton and made this one extremely sturdy. This is a good table to make if you want to make a support for a stationary tool like a scroll saw or a bench sander or even a planer, or if you just want a workbench or a side table. So check out my Patreon page and my Instagram page if you haven't already. I'll put the links in the description. And when it comes to how much these tables cost me, that one cost me less than 30 euros to make, and this big one, which is 1 by 1.2 meters, cost me less than 70 euros to make. So to make this table, you'll need a drill and or an impact driver. Since I have both, I'll be using both. You need some screw bits or a screwdriver, you know, the kind that you hold in your hand and you twist like that. You'll need, well, you don't need them, but it's nice to have them, a number 6 and a number 8 countersink tapered bit. You'll need a speed square or a square. You don't really need it, but it's nice to have it. If you want to sand your wood before you make your table, you will need a sander of some description. I'm going to use my palm sander. You'll need a tape measure, pencil, and a saw. I'm going to use my miter saw, and I also use my jigsaw. But you don't need a miter saw or a jigsaw. You could just use a circular saw or a hand saw. You have to push this back and forth for it to cut the wood. You don't just pull a trigger. They're pretty useful actually. I have a few of them lying around the shop and I use them occasionally. That's all you need really. There are other tools that could be handy, like maybe a planer, although you really do not need a planer. This can be handy for measuring your corners. You put it on the end of your tape measure and then goes like that in the corner, so you can measure corner to corner. You don't need it, but if you have one, give it a use it for this project. When it comes to materials, you'll need some wood like this. These are 40 by 60s, actually 38 by 63s, but they're called 40 by 60s. To make the workbench I'm making, which will be 89 centimeters high, I believe 65 long and 35 wide, I use 2.5 3-meter pieces of this 40 by 60s, and for building that entire table I used 4.2 meter long pieces. You will also need some sheet goods, plywood, MDF, even just boards for the tabletop. For this one I used MDF, although for the one I'm making I will use just plywood. I believe this is 22 millimeter thick plywood. This is 18 millimeter thick MDF. This MDF is the same as what I have on my other workbench. If you want to put a shelf, you'll need some sheet goods, plywood, MDF, whatever. I used 18 by 200 millimeter boards. I used 2 3-meter long lengths for this workbench. And also, if you want to make it really sturdy, you'll need some wood like this. For this workbench I used 2 meters, although it would be good to have a little more if you want to have bigger braces in the corner. I'm not sure what size this is, but that's what it looks like. It can be any wood you want. You could even just cut it out of plywood. You'll need some screws. I'm gonna use 5x60s and 5x90s. 5x60s I believe are number 12s or number 10 by 2.5 inch, and these are number 12 by 3.5 inch. You can have any screws you want, but these are the screws I'm going to be using for assembling my 40x60s. And then also you'll need some smaller screws. I'm going to use 4x50s for attaching the plywood to the top. So when I'm cutting wood like this kind of wood, I don't like to use the factory end. So I need to cut a piece that's 36 centimeters long. So if I'm measuring from the end, I'll go to 37. Plugging these things in really helps. Then I'll measure 36 and I'll cut the end off. If there's the price tag that's stapled on, I'll remove that before I cut, just so that I don't hit any metal with the blade. And because I need to cut 2 of these, just line it up with the blade. You want to make sure that the blade is stopped before you do this. And also, if you're going to do this technique and you're going to do more than 2, take the first piece you cut, and mark it, and then use the first piece you cut to measure all the other pieces. Because if you use this one to cut it, then use the one you just cut to measure the next one, you could be a few millimeters off. And if you're cutting 10 pieces all the same length, and you do that, and you're 2 millimeters off each time, that's 2 centimeters over the 2 pieces. So always use the piece, pick one piece and use it to measure all the other pieces. Now, because I wasn't really paying attention. Okay, yeah. So to make the workbench without the supports, you need 12 pieces. So you need 4 legs. I'm making mine 89 centimeters high, so I cut 4 pieces 89 centimeters. Then you need 4 cross sections lengthwise. This is the longer length. I believe these are 57. Yeah, these are 57 centimeters long, so I cut 4 of those. Then these are the shorter length pieces. These go at the front and back. These are 23 centimeters long. And this is where if you want to sand this stuff, sand it now. So the way I make this, I make 2 frames So I'll take two of the longer side pieces. To cut these pieces, the legs you cut the actual height you want your workbench. These guys you cut the length you want to make the workbench minus this width times 2. So these are 40 centimeters wide, so I want to make it 65 centimeters long, so I took 8 centimeters away from 65 and got 57. And then width, you take the width you want. I want to make a workbench that's 35 centimeters wide, so I took 35 centimeters, subtracted this way, so these are 60 wide, so I subtracted 12 and got 23. So that's how you cut these pieces. So the workbench takes two of these frames, so you line it up like this. Hope you can see. The two leg pieces sandwich the two cross pieces. These are the longer cross pieces, the 57s. So the total dimension is 89 centimeters high, which is the length of the leg pieces, and 64.5 wide, which is the dimension I want to make the workbench. Then you take corner clamps and just put them on the corners. You don't have to have corner clamps, but I'm using the corner clamps because I have them. And because I don't have four of the same kind, I have to alternate where I put the clamps so that I can measure my diagonal. So I put these two, the red ones on this side and the blue ones on this side, so I can measure red to blue and red to blue. Now I'm going to make sure that this is square by measuring on the diagonal from the corners, like this. And you have a few millimeters of tolerance. So this is about 2 millimeters off. So because it's almost a meter on the diagonal, it's 98 centimeters. That's about 0.2%, I'd say. Of course, the more accurate you are, the better the outcome will be, but I'd say you can probably be up to 1% off. I would recommend trying to be as accurate as possible, but if you don't really care, 1% is probably alright. So now, to fasten the corners together, just going to drill a pilot hole in the corner. This is a number 6 bit. I think that's about 4 millimeters. Then I'll just put a 5x60 screw in. So I do 2 per corner. So now that both frames are built, and I build them this way rather than building them. 1 minute. I build them like that rather than like this, so that you get more place, you can get more screw in there, and also you don't have to use as big as screws, and also they're a little sturdier this way. Now that I've got these, and because the people who make these 40x60s aren't too precise, some of them are a little wider than others, so the back, all the wood is flush, so this is going to be the inside. The unflush bits are going to be on the outside. So now it's time to attach these together, and I'll show you how to do that. It'll probably be a time lapse just because it's a bit of a tricky job. Okay, so now that we've got our one, what would you call these? Cross pieces in place, I'm going to screw it on with just one screw for now. So when doing this, you want to be careful not to hit the two other screws up here. So I've got all four cross pieces on. If you don't have the corner clamp, you can just hold them, and don't do these in the air if you have a corner clamp. Flip it so that when you're doing these are against the bench. I only put one screw for now so that if I need to move them around, I'm not pulling two screws out. So now it's time to attach the other piece. Just like that. And do the exact same thing with this one, except that you don't need the corner clamps. Okay, so now we have this. You want to make sure this is square. Measure diagonal. How many sides? All 6 sides. Okay, so it's perfectly square. So now it's time to put in that second screw in each corner, and remember, hope you can hear me, be careful of the other screws that are in here with your drill bit. So I want to add a shelf to this table, and I don't want to put it right at the bottom. Actually, yeah, I am going to put it right at the bottom. So if you want to put your shelf maybe halfway, or maybe you want to put 2 shelves in. Mark where you want it, both sides, and then use C-clamps to hold it together. So these are the 2 pieces that you saw me cutting at the beginning of the video. And they need to be shaved a little bit. So these 2 pieces are the width, and then I've cut 2 18 by 200 boards that are the length. So this is going to be my shelf, and I think one of the boards, yeah, it's going to need to be ripped. And I'm going to screw these down with 4.5 by 50. No, 4.5 by 40 screws. These guys. So I've cut the top. Like I said, this is 22 mil plywood. Now this is just a scrap I have. It's all the plywood I have at the moment, so I'm just gonna use it. I forgot to re-measure these pieces. I cut them long on purpose, and that's why there's this lip here. But if you measure these, or if you're cutting a piece off of a bigger piece, you won't have this lip here. But I don't mind having a lip here. It's just a side table, and I can always find another scrap later on. So I'm just going to fasten this down with 6 4x50 screws. So, it's finished. There it is. So now I will tell you what I did on the big table to make it extra sturdy. So in all 4 corners, I added these guys. Hope you can see. Yep, these guys. They are 28 centimeters long. I just cut them on an angle with the miter saw. It's 2 screws, 2 screws. There's one on each corner. There's one here, one here. Hope you can see me. Yep. I didn't put a support post here because I wanted this open for storage. And then I put a support post there, and on the other end, I just put it in the frame before I assembled. Actually, I made the table and then I put this in. Like, I made the table the exact same way I made the other one, and then I put all the supports and stuff in. So I put this one in on each end, 2 5x90s up and down, and then when it comes to the shelf on the bottom, I put one here, one there, and one at the other end. And I did screw, as you can see, through this into this. And then I put the boards on. There's 4 plus these 2 half boards. So yeah, that's how I made this extra sturdy. Oh, and also I put that support piece in with 2 5x90s. And this table I gave a bit of an overhang so that I can clamp stuff to it. This has about 5 centimeters of overhang, although you could do more, like 10 centimeters of overhang like I have on that table. Just, I only did 5 on this one so that in the future, if I get a bigger sheet of plywood, I can have the 10 centimeters of overhang and have a bigger table. And I did use quite a few more screws on fastening this one to the table. So it does not rock. It's a little unstable because it's still sinking into the gravel, but it does not rock. So this is an extremely robust workbench. And it cost me less than 70 euros to make it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.